This talk is part of a series presented by the TechAide AI4Good conference and hackathon. Our goal with this virtual event is to highlight technological innovation driven by artificial intelligence and directed towards beneficial areas such as health, environment, accessibility, and human rights. Importantly, we also aim to raise money for TechAide, or the United Way, a nonprofit dedicated to fighting poverty and social exclusion. And this is where you can help. Please consider donating by clicking the link in the description of this video. Any amount will be greatly appreciated. Also, if you're watching this before November 12, 2020, consider registering to our event for a chance to ask questions and interact with our speakers. This event would not have been possible without the help of our sponsors such as DeepMind, Ubisoft, Ivado, and Dell Technologies. We thank them for their generous support. Please visit our website for a full list of sponsors and partners.
Particularly, we'd like to highlight our gold sponsor, CDW. Proactively mitigating risk will never be easy. It's ongoing, it's daunting, it's confusing, but it's not impossible. Let CDW and Dell help you with a solution to keep you protected. With 24/7, 365 Security Operations Center, they are well equipped to keep your organization safe. And with that, we'll leave you to our feature presentation.
Good morning. My name is Miguel Luengo-Oroz. I'm the Chief Data Scientist for United Nations Global Pools. I'm really happy to share with you some of our experience and work in the field of AI for good. So, as most of you will know, the United Nations work on sustainable development, humanitarian action, peace, and climate change. And inside the UN Global Pools is the special initiative of the Secretary General that works towards a vision where AI and big data is used safely and responsibly as a public good. So we do three different things, okay? We work on discovering new methodologies and bridging the gap between research and innovation and operations to use these new methodologies in the field. We also work on scaling those methodologies that work, what we call a high operational impact. So we really try to provide our UN colleagues, UN agencies, the best tools that they can use for their job. But also, as we say, we like to walk the walk and talk the talk. We also work on policy, on AI policy and data policy, all from data strategy to data privacy to AI and ethics. So how we are organized? We organize in three different labs. The first one was established in New York back in 2010. Then the second one and the third one are in Jakarta in Indonesia and in Kampala in Uganda. So from the labs, we work at regional level, but also from New York, we really work at global level. So what is key is that we always partner with a UN agency that has the mandate and the domain expertise. So let's say that we can work with UNICEF in subjects around children, with the High Commissioner for Refugees on refugees, with the World Food Programme on food security, with UNESCO on science, with the International Organization for Migration on migrations, and so on. The idea is that in all these projects, as an innovation lab, we essentially try to sit all the stakeholders on the table. Okay, so we have like academia, private sector, governments, international organizations, civil society, all trying to design the right project. Once we have that, and that right project always have like different pieces, which can be data, tools, and expertise. Once we have done that project, then we share broadly. We try to put it for scale. Okay, but here, I guess that the key is that our team has some particularities. It's a multidisciplinary team where half of the people in each of the labs have really technical skills. They are experts on like machine learning, data science, data visualization, complex networks. And half of the team is more what you could find in a UN office, where you have like partnerships officers and project managers, like legal advisors, and so on. So the idea is that we put together these projects and we really try to pass from research and innovation into operational projects. So let me share with you some of the projects we have been working over the past years. So one first example is in this place, the place of this picture, which is the Satari refugee camp in the border between Jordan and Syria. Okay, and during the Syrian crisis, this became the house of almost 100,000 people. Okay, and one of the first things you have to do when there is like a settlement like this one, rapidly growing, is that you need to know, the number of structures, the number of people you have there, and do the appropriate planning. To do that, could be quite obvious that satellite imagery might be useful, might be relevant. Okay, so as in other projects related to like machine learning, you could train a model to detect, in this case, to count shelters, give an information to the field officers for this planning. What is a little bit different in the context of humanitarian assistance is that one pixel, in some particular cases, might mean the lives of many people. Okay, so in this context, it's not a place where we can have a lot of false positives or false negatives. It's not a context where we can fully trust the algorithm. It's a context where actually we want to have, in this case, the perfect, like shelter counting, or in other challenges, for instance, like flood mapping. We really want to know which are the regions, which are the houses that are flooded. Okay, so for that, what our team has been working on is in a concept where essentially you have like humans on the loop or analysts on the loop. So the idea is that we have developed a system and a tool where essentially the analyst is training on the fly a baseline AI model which intends to detect structures, but essentially adapting to the different context. Okay, because at the end of the day, it's not the same like a camp in the Middle East, that a camp in some places in Africa, that a camp in another places in Latin America. Really, the geography is different, and the way the images look like are different. So what we came up is with a system and a tool where the goal is not to have the model or the algorithm that has like the highest accuracy as you could do in any challenge, but the goal is that the combination between the machine and the expert, that human in the loop AI system, provides a perfect analysis of the image in the shortest time possible. Okay, because the alternative, what's happening today, and this is a reality, is that every humanitarian disaster, human analysts are annotating and tagging those images to really have the perfect information, or the almost perfect information, coming down to our teams on the ground to take the decisions. Okay, so this is an AI on the loop system. Maybe this is just food for thought. Sometimes you need to think in practical terms what will be to include these AI systems in real deployments. So just going down to another project in the camp in Satari. This is a project I participated in and went down to the camp a few times. And what happened is that the early years of the camp, water delivery to these 100,000 people, which actually is a city, was done by a fleet of trucks. Okay, so you have between 20 and 30 trucks that every day were going around the camp, like filling tanks with like clean water and taking wastewater from other tanks. Okay, and when we saw this, we thought, okay, I think we can help here, because how this system is working right now is that our colleague from UNICEF and UNOPS is essentially using like a paper-based system, telling the trucks which is the districts that they need to cover every day. Okay, and sometimes happen that the wastewater tank is really full, and the wastewater is like causing problems, and the truck didn't manage to get to that location, and so on. So we said, okay, maybe we can like digitize the system. We call this like the Uber for wastewater collection, and we can make this really, really efficient. And I mean, the idea was very simple. I mean, the algorithm, you can see, it's very clear. We can put GPS on the tracks. We can map all the tanks. We can make like predictive models on where they will be filled. We can have like the optimal trajectories. And what happened? It didn't work. Okay? It didn't work because actually we were not able to align the needs and the motivations of all the stakeholders. In this case, the truck drivers were from outside the camp, and they have other motivations. Sometimes were not very good motivations. We saw cases where they were like putting like walls inside the tank of the truck. So when you measure the water with a stick from the top, it looked like they have provided more clean water or got more wastewater than expected. Other times we had cases where some substances were inside the clean water, I mean, resulting in people that were sick and were going to the hospital. So really, all this process or this problem was a people problem, okay? And that is the reality. We have found that in all our projects, really half of the time is spent designing the right problem. That means having the right question, approaching with the right strategy, but also having the right people around the table and finding the motivations that work for all, okay? In this case, I mean, at the end, the right solution was not as we designed up front, but the right solution had a gamification strategy where by collecting some particular tanks, the truck drivers in this case were getting like more rewards, okay? And that gamification strategy was also aligned with what we were expecting from the water management system side. Why your project sucks? Okay, this is a piece composed by essentially made of one email I also sent a few years ago, and one colleague made this poster, because essentially what happens in this project is these are always multidisciplinary projects that require the alignment, as we have seen, of many stakeholders, but also many other disciplines. So you will have the urban planner, you will have the privacy expert, you will have the design expert, and most important, the decision maker on the policy maker will ask, so what? Okay, so this is just, I mean, an advice. You have to be ready to learn to translate among disciplines, to learn to understand what others and what other stakeholders are really wanting to say. Okay, and I've been really, really lucky. I joined the United Nations like almost 10 years ago. I had the chance to listen to Barack Obama in the General Assembly and learn diplomats jargon. I had the chance to learn humanitarian practitioners jargon. I have the chance to really work almost every domain, from like poverty, health, food security, education, refugees, climate, human rights. And I see that really there is a huge opportunity, and most important, a huge need in the world for people that can translate between all these disciplines, all these domains of expertise, but also the technical domain, okay? And really in a field which is moving so fast, as is moving today, like machine learning, AI, data science, big data, I mean, you name it. I think this is really required. I mean, when I first joined the UN, before I was doing research at university, research on computer vision, on medical imaging, and really, for me, it has been a long path, okay? And really understanding on these languages is not something that will happen overnight, but it's something where there's really, really a huge opportunity. And over the years, it's not just working on the projects. We have managed to create, for instance, guides, like this guide for data innovation, where we distill the steps that like a project manager, a project officer sitting in any country on the world could take to think and to design a project that incorporates any of of the techniques, of the computational techniques we work with. We have also worked on creating like risk and harm assessment. Okay, that's really important, because before undertaking any project, we need to understand which are the risks, how the project can be, how what we're creating can be misused, which are like the potential harms, and really decide if it's worth going or not. Okay, we are now having this discussion on the AI ethics field, but I guess that this applies and have been applying to many domains and to many types of projects. And for me, also something that we have learned, and I have learned, and I think it's very important, is to say no. We have stopped projects because we thought they were very risky. We have said no to undertake projects that we thought would create potential risk, because of many things. Because you can have, you really need to understand the context. Sometimes the context is a country with, let's say, a history of genocide. Sometimes the data you are intended to use could contain sensitive information. Sometimes there can be bad actors that could misuse your data. Sometimes there are just unintended consequences that you need to foresee before going. So it's really important. And I think with all the potential of digital tools and AI, it's really important to make this assessment and think what could go wrong before you undertake the project. So that implies also making sure that you have your principles, your ethical and privacy principles, and in case there are regulations, you follow those regulations. So now I'm going to share what we have been doing over the last months, okay? And essentially with the COVID pandemic, we had to change some of our portfolio and agenda, and really we have been supporting colleagues in UN agencies like the World Health Organization in the response to the pandemic. So we have done few projects from our labs, and really we are constantly like adding more to portfolio. We are also looking for academic partners and experts that can help us in all these lines of work, which essentially go along like health emergency, go along measuring socioeconomic impacts, and thinking how to build back better. One of the first things we did back in March was actually to map out all the papers, all the initiatives, all the applications related to AI that could be applied to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, and this was a great job done with colleagues from the World Health Organization, from Global Pulse, but also from Mila, Montreal institution, with Sasha Lucchioni, and we were able to essentially categorize all the potential applications at three different scales. We call like molecular scale, clinical scale, and societal scale. We understood that though there were really applications across all domains, most of them were not mature enough, most of them were not tested enough, and were not really ready for operational implementation. But really the scope was large. Okay, and we have seen, at molecular scale, how AI could be used to fold proteins. We have seen at clinical scale how AI could be used to find patterns in CT scan or X-rays. We have seen how epidemiological models for which we do not have analytical equations could be approximated just by the data, like training data. But also we have seen how the field of infodemics has exploded. Okay, because the same way we are living in an epidemic, we are also living in an infodemic. So the amount of misinformation and disinformation which is traveling around the media, but not just the classic media, but also the social media, is huge, and that also is costing lives. Okay, we have helped and participated with help the World Health Organization to really create this first infodemics conference. It's interesting that governments, member states, have included the role or like the task of managing the infodemic in the mandate of the World Health Organization. So this is considered really, really seriously. And the reality is that that infodemic is in part driven by algorithmic decisions, driven by AI models, driven by machines that amplify what some actors say, driven by machines that put you in down the rabbit hole in like looking information. So that infodemic also might be happening in science. Okay, we have seen an avalanche of papers. It's really hard to keep track of what's going on, but I mean, at least from what we see here in this post, I think the infodemic for scientists, the first wave is already passing, but it's important, and I think for us it's one of our main projects has been thinking how we can help. I mean, finding this fake news, this false information, this misinformation, how we can like discern and quantify what is scientific information, what is not. And one of our most important projects have to do with a social network, which is probably one of the oldest social networks. Okay, and is not the Twitter or the Facebook or similar, is the radio. And radio is still a really important source of information in many places. So if we want to leave no people behind, we need to listen and understand what is the information, what is being said, what is the understanding of all populations, including those that do not have access to the internet. So the work that we are doing, and this is based on work we started a few years ago, is using speech to text technologies to transcribe public radio streams and then doing mining on those streams. And we are doing that essentially, we have started to do that essentially for those languages that do not have commercially available models, essentially. So we have been working, for instance, in Somalia or in Uganda with Luganda, or in Mali. So just the interesting thing here from a research perspective is that actually you are opening the box to a data source that has been there for many time, but really nobody has understood or analyzed in a systematic way. And you can count thousands of papers analyzing Twitter or Reddit data, but you don't know at the scale, I mean, what or how this information is passed through radio. So we have been mapping the different topics which are discussed. I mean, this is one example for Uganda, where we had discussions around health, and this health includes like governance of health facilities, access to health services, complaints about health services. Another topic we have seen is really discussed in the radio is like low scale natural disasters, which, I mean, don't pass the threshold to be like in the main media. Is roads which are blocked, is other topic is corruption. So really there are like many things which are discussed in talk shows, and this critical information which aggregated can provide you useful insights. So now with COVID, we are working like based on those experiences and supporting the World Health Organization. We're trying to mine which are the topics which are said and which are discussed around COVID, which are like topics on misinformation and disinformation. Okay, for instance, like a few months ago, we were tracking discussions around COVID organics, which is a plant, an herb that you're supposed to eat and cure COVID. So now we are thinking to make this system global. Okay, and just to give you a broad sense of the numbers, there are around more than 7,000 languages in the world. Out of these 7,000 languages, 1,000 languages have more than 100,000 native speakers. Okay, and out of these 1,000, just 100 are commercially available at most, using like all the from all the technology providers. So that means that we still have many parts of the world, many people that will not be covered by digital technologies. Okay, so our idea here is leave no voice behind, and we want to do this global radio monitoring platform for COVID. As as you can think, COVID and those topics can be behind any of these transcripts. Finally, I'm gonna just comment another project that I'm really proud of, and is a project that takes place in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, in the biggest refugee camp of the world. Okay, this is more than 500,000 people, and as you can imagine, in some places like camps or like other similar situations, is hard to maintain the social distance. It's hard to have access to all the health facilities or all the hygiene measures you need. So in these places also, you need to take, as anywhere, you need to take the best possible policy measures. So what we have done, together with colleagues from UNHCR, from the World Health Organization, from IBM and MIT, and from Durham University, and the camp management team, is really create an agent-based simulation of the camp. Okay, we are talking about more than 500,000 agents embedded in a virtual world, in a digital twin of the camp, which simulates the geography, the demographics, the services, the schools, the different types of facilities. And in that virtual world, in that agent-based model, what we are simulating is the impact of public health interventions. Okay, and is simulating, okay, what happened if everybody wore masks? What happened if half of the people wore masks? What happened if the masks are from cotton? What happened if these are surgical masks? What happened if you open the schools? What happened if you open the schools 1 day out of 2? What happened if, and you can name it. Okay, so that model in uncertain situations allow to somehow understand what will be the impact of different public health measures. And I think even beyond Cox's Bazar or beyond refugee camps, this type of approach allow to a more nuanced understanding of actually how these public health measures are working. It's not just a model that will do like that and say the number of cases. It's not about the number of cases. It's about if measures that we are taking, like lockdowns or really having less, let's say, closing some sort of schools or gyms or bars. Will all these measures that are being taken at the small scale work? For that, I believe we will have to have frameworks that incorporate classical compartment models like SIR together with computational simulations, agent-based models. So, this project continues, and we are constantly providing simulations for new potential interventions, but also we are scaling this to other places. So, all in all, I think what is important is that in this, call it AI4Good space, but at the end is AI for the SDGs, AI for humanitarian response, AI for climate, is that we understand that all the tools that we are developing, all these methodologies, need to be put in context. Okay, they are not in the air. They need to be put in context, integrated, and really have the impact. And we really need to assess how these methods could contribute, but also what could go wrong. Okay, and that, this is a very clear example that we are experiencing now with COVID. The reality is that the COVID pandemic is affecting more to vulnerable population. Even bias in our AI models for particular applications could increase inequality. So you can think, for instance, this research that showed that when you train computer vision model on CT scans or radiographies, and in the training data you have data from like one gender more than the other, so for more men than women, for instance, the results will work worse in one gender. So in this case, from that inequality, from that bias on AI, you can pass to inequality. There are other inherent algorithmic bias that could translate in inequality. So think about, for instance, the different algorithms that will be used to distribute the vaccine once we have it, or even bias which are like implicit to the technology we are using. So when we look to contact tracing apps that work with Bluetooth, you need to have a minimum version of an operative system to work those apps. So you are leaving behind those people that do not have access to those phones up front. So I guess that also is a point and food for thought in this space, is when you do that assessment, you also need to understand and try to map out if the solution you are providing will increase inequality, because, I mean, inherently or as an unintended consequence. All in all, what we want, or I guess that there is something that we all agree, or something that all the countries, all the member states have agreed and to respect, which is human rights. So any of those applications that we develop with AI and in this like new digital revolution, we must be sure that they respect human rights. That is the first principle. And from there, I mean, hopefully they can also contribute in a positive way to the society. So that's all. Merci beaucoup. C'était un plaisir de partager avec vous. Et merci beaucoup pour la conférence TechAide et pour m'inviter et faire le travail qu'ils font. Et à bientôt.